Think you don't need streamers or stashes? Think again. Emmanuel Wilson has been a major stash for us all season, and Hunter Henry was our main streamer of the week last week, and they were both fantasy gold last Sunday. But as always, it's a new week, and that means new opportunities and new value to be found. So each week, I'll be bringing you a video answering two simple questions. Who should I stream this week, and who should I stash for the future on the Fantasy First Down? I'm Ben Wasley. Welcome to the Fantasy First Down. Today, we're talking streamers and stashes for Week 13, as we do every single Thursday. If you've got any questions, make sure you hit me up on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down or on Twitter at Fantasy First Down with no O. And also make sure you check out my rankings over at ffdfantasyfootball.com. Plus, you can like and subscribe on YouTube. That'd be great. To keep things simple, we're going to define a streamer as any player you wouldn't usually start who is a viable option this week. They could be on your bench. They could be on waivers depending on your league. We'll define a stash as any player you can potentially find on waivers that you should stash for the future, either because they've got a favorable matchup coming up in the playoffs or because they could become a future fantasy starter. Let's get into it with the quarterbacks. And Jacoby Brissett has finished as a top 12 quarterback in every start this season. And he now faces one of the league's easiest quarterback matchups. If you started him last week, there's no reason not to go back to the well again. And in week 12, well, is Jameis Winston dominating the Lions for a quarterback one finish. But Jackson Dart is back this week, and he's an even better fantasy proposition than Winston given his rushing floor. After all, he's been the QB3 in 3 of his last 5 starts. And stash-wise, it's always hard to trust Tua Tagovailoa, especially without Tyreek Hill and Darren Waller. But I think he could be a surprise playoff asset. The Dolphins get 3 top 7 quarterback matchups in the final 3 weeks or so. If you're struggling at the position and need upside, Tagovailoa is a risk worth taking. For the runners, and the Steelers tend to use a lot of Kenny Gainwell when they're chasing the game, and he's had a lot of success as a check down option and change of pace guy against weak run defenses. This Bills defense is awful against the run, but the Steelers should still be behind for much of the game. This just screams a Gainwell boom game, especially in PPR. Plus, I'm also starting Jaylen Warren as well. And if Alvin Kamara is out for week 13, I'm expecting plenty of backup Devin Neal. He's got a low ceiling given Taysom Hill likely gets a lot of the goal line looks, but in PPR leagues in particular, he's an entirely solid RB3/flex option. He's just got a very low floor because we don't really know what they're going to do now that Kamara is out, as opposed to just getting injured partway through a game. And Coleman Angai got out-touched DeAndre Swift by design last week and could easily be the more valuable back in week 13 as well. The Eagles don't seem like a juicy matchup on paper, but they've conceded top half running back points this season, making Manangai a viable deeper streamer. As for stashes, well, Ashton Jeanty may sit in week 13, making Raheem Mostert a great one-week stash. But I'd be thinking longer if you're looking for upside down the stretch. He is the kind of guy that could be useful because Jeanty has been having some injury issues, and we know those sort of things compound. It does seem like Jeanty is training this week, so it does seem like Mostert isn't going to be as great a stash as it was when I wrote the article attached to this over on Razzball, but I would still be considering holding Mostert, especially if there's a little upside available on waivers. As for other holds that I like better, well, my top handcuffs at the moment that you should be picking up if they're available in your league, guys like Blake Corum and Brian Robinson are going to become league winners if there's an injury in front of them. Bashal Tuden and Chuba Hubbard at least go into an every down role in that case. Guys like Ollie Gordon and Tank Bigsby are in high upside offenses, even though they're not going to be every down guys. They're still useful guys to pick up. We know Isaiah Davis would get a big role. Amir Abdullah, similar to Bigsby, would get a heavy role in a good offense, even though it wouldn't be used as much. Same thing with Kid Mitchell. And we know someone like a Dylan Sampson at least has upside there because Quinton Judkins has struggled with injuries at times. And I throw Michael Carter in there as well, just to see what happens. Wide receivers, and Troy Franklin is available in over half of leagues. And that makes absolutely no sense to me at all. He's out-targeted Courtland Sutton every single week since week 5 and several of the weeks before that as well. He's the wide receiver 26 on the season so far. In week 13, he gets a top 3 wide receiver matchup against the Commanders. He's a must-own player who should be started in the vast majority of leagues. And Courtland Sutton is also an entirely fine start this week as well. Now, Christian Watson seems to have taken over as the wide receiver 1 in Green Bay over Romeo Doubs. He's top 45 yards in every one of his games this season, has out-snapped and out-targeted Doubs over the last fortnight. That's a good floor, and there's plenty of upside too. The Lions are a top 10 matchup, making Watson a solid upside start in week 13. His floor's a little bit lower than some, but when you're getting 45 yards and a couple of receptions every game, in PPR, at least that means you can rely on him for a good 8 points with an upside for high double digits. Jaden Higgins has 26 targets and 3 touchdowns over the last 5 weeks, and he's still only getting 60% of the Texans' snaps, but his usage has been rising of late, especially in one receiver sets. So that makes him a solid streamer in a good passing matchup against the Colts. We do know the Colts have improved their secondary, but that's still where you can attack them. Now, let's go a little bit deeper and talk wide receiver stashes. Since joining the Jets a little over a fortnight ago, you think I'm going to say Adonai Mitchell? I'm not. It's John Mechie. He has 10 targets, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He gets a tough matchup against the Falcons this week, but he has a very solid stretch of opponents in the fantasy playoffs, making him a viable low-end stash if you're struggling at receiver. I especially like him with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. Now, tight ends, and I've been high on Juwan Johnson all season. He's currently a top 10 tight end, so I definitely feel justified in that. This week, he gets one of the league's top tight end matchups and should be used even more again with Alvin Kamara out. I'm happy to start him this week, but he's a risky proposition longer term, so make sure you still back him up and have a second tight end. And one that you should definitely be picking up is Brendan Strange, who was sneakily a very effective deputy whenever Evan Ingram was out last season, and I expected a continuation of that fantasy value this year, which is why I ranked him so high in the preseason. Unfortunately, an IR stint crueled his momentum after 23 targets in the first month of the season. But he was back in week 12 with 93 yards on a lower than usual snap count. That should rise this week, so I'm backing him in as a low-end stream and a good stash. Speaking of stashes, it's hard to know what the Saints will do with Alvin Kamara out, but they could turn to a steady dose of Taysom Hill. He's a little too risky for my taste without seeing it first, but he's a viable streamer if you're desperate at the position and considering guys like a Mike Gesicki or an Evan Ingram for this week. Hill could easily get the goal line snaps and the short yardage stuff. That means he really needs a touchdown to pay off, and in PPR leagues is even riskier. Having said that, he could also be one of the main running backs and therefore get plenty of touches. We just plain don't know. Kickers and DST. Zane Gonzalez is coming off back-to-back top 5 finishes and gets the best kicker matchup, the Jets, in week 13. Did you even know he was playing for the Falcons? I'm sure a lot of you did not, but you should be picking him up. How others aren't ranking him higher, I have no idea. I think it's possibly because we just forget he's there. Meanwhile, with a floor of 8 points and 3 top 10 finishes in the last 5 games, Evan McPherson is most certainly back. He's a solid streamer against the 7th best kicker matchup, the Ravens, and should benefit from Joe Burrow's return as well. As for DSTs, the Raiders have been awful and get a new OC this week. This should be another boom week for an inconsistent Chargers DST. And the Titans have been fantasy gold for opposing DSTs as well, and I see no reason for that to change this week. The Jags are coming off a 6-sack performance and a blanking of Justin Herbert's Chargers the week before. So Tennessee should be easy pickings for Jacksonville. And it's that time of year when I'll finally concede the merits of stashing a DST, though still not a kicker. Not ever a kicker. New Orleans faces the Panthers, Jets, and Titans in the fantasy playoffs, and that's the sort of juicy schedule I want to be a part of, especially if I have a week 15 bye. I'm only doing this in leagues where there's unlikely to be more than about 10 DSTs available on waivers because most people are stashing DSTs all season. This is the time where you can go and get a team that's probably owned in most leagues. They're owned in my 14-team league with deep benches where a lot of people are stashing DSTs. There's only 7 available on waivers. I've still been streaming all season. I'm still first, and this is where I'm going to start stashing because the Saints will be available. If the Saints aren't there, I would also consider the Dolphins DST short-term as well. And that's all we've got for the Streamers and Stashes show for week 13. Make sure you pop those comments in the comments below or hit us up on Instagram or on Twitter. Plus, it would be great if you could like and subscribe on YouTube. Look forward to chatting to you guys next week when I will be Mo-free. We're getting rid of the Mo. Make sure you donate for Movember if you haven't already. Look forward to chatting to you guys next time.